Hello and welcome to the video. This is an overview of a kit from GepRC. This is something called the TinyGo. Now, I got it in before Christmas. I've been playing around with it. I kind of want to show you what's in here because this is a big box. And believe it or not, what comes in this box is this little quadcopter. But not just this little quadcopter, basically everything you need, with the exception of 4 AA batteries and a couple of SD cards, come in here to get you flying. So what I thought I would do would kind of show you what comes in the box, run through how it's set up and what you get for your money, because the listings that I've seen, this kit is around a couple of $100. So it's worthwhile me showing you how it actually comes, because as you can see from this footage, I was actually unboxing this before Christmas. I had one of my Christmas jumpers on, and I found in here that it wasn't just the goggles, radio and model with the batteries and other pieces, but you also get this beautiful little case with a strap to keep everything in. And that was a bit of a surprise. I just expected it to be loads of foam pieces. But this makes it a really cute kit to not only be something that you can get your hands on and go and fly with, but also somewhere to keep it all nice and safe. Now, if I zoom in a little bit, let me show you what's actually inside this thing. So first of all, we have a big place at the front. Nothing in it in here, but if you want to put extra batteries or something, there's a couple of pockets on the side. There's kind of a belt strap on the back, which is quite good if you want to attach it to something else. And then the main event is obviously inside with a big zip around this carrying handle. As you open it up, there is a whole raft of goodies. I'll show each of these pieces closer up in a minute. The first thing I'll pull out here is the goggle. It has 2 antennas on here, has a DVR, believe it or not. This is the little TinyGo quadcopter. Again, show you this close up in a minute. And then the other thing in here is the little G8, great, I'm guessing, GR8 radio controller. Now, if I just dig around in the top, there's a whole raft of other bits. And that includes your battery charger, your batteries, battery straps, spare set of props, tools for the camera, as well as a couple of manuals and some GepRC stickers as well. So let me give you a bit of a close-up of how all this stuff came and what the specs are of these individual pieces, because together it makes quite a good beginner setup. Obviously not great if you already have a radio or a set of FPV goggles, but perfect if you want to get everything in the box and get flying with the minimum amount of hassle. So this little TinyGo is a 79mm motor to motor, has an F4 based flight controller, running Betaflight on here. I'll show you the setup of this in a minute. BL Heli 12 amp ESCs. VTX on board is capable of everything from 25 to 200 milliwatts. But the camera on here is a Cadix Loris 4K 60 frames per second unit. So you can put an SD card in here and also record locally in 60 frames a second 4K. Motors are GR1102 10,000 kV motors spinning 1636 by 4 Gemfan props. And it is a beautiful little quadcopter. But then the GepRC stuff tends to be exceptionally well made. Separate receiver at the back, so if you really want to swap it out for something else later on, you could using a standard S+ input, which is great. Surrounded by nice foam pieces to make it very robust, so you can bounce it off stuff. Dipole antenna out the top, and you use 2 batteries underneath to give you a flight time, and the flight time is pretty good. I'm getting about 5 or 6 minutes flying around without too much trouble at all. Next thing to look at then is the radio. This is the GepRC GR8, great. See, I like what they did there. Radio controller, 2.4 GHz, radio protocol is FHSS, 8 channels, and it has dual antennas built in, and it's going to require 4 AA batteries. I really like the way they've actually printed on here exactly what each of the buttons do, and that is set up in Betaflight already. The radio is bound, so it's dead easy to set up. You just turn it on, leave it as the default 1 setting. I guess you could maybe store up to 3 receivers on here, maybe that's what it is. Bind button on the back. The gimbals are okay. It's a little bit of a plasticky feeling radio, but actually works very, very well when you are flying this little model. It's a nice radio for somebody who just wants to have a go and get into the hobby. It gives you all the things you need without all the extra things you don't that cost more money. Amazingly, even the sticks on here are adjustable. So if you are a pincher or a thumber and you want to change the height and throw, then that is available even on this little radio too. Last thing out the kit is the goggles. These goggles have 800 by 480 screen at the bottom, standard lens, 2 antennas. I'm not sure if it's true diversity. Very, very clearly labelled. RPSMA connectors, sadly, on the goggles. I only say that because I'm a Fat Shark guy. I've been using SMA since I started. Very simple to change the channel and band. And believe it or not, in here there's also settings for recording as well. Now, in this bag is things like a power lead and also the antennas that go on the top. It has an inbuilt battery in here. The battery is a 2000 milliamp hour battery. Plug it and charge it via a USB cable, and you don't need to connect any battery to it to use it, which is a really cute idea. The batteries in the kit, I get 4 of them. They're 530 milliamp hours. They're high voltage LiPos with pH 2.0 connectors. Let me just very quickly plug the TinyGo into Betaflight, show you how it's set up. Obviously it's turned upside down because the USB port's at the bottom. Freaking out because it hasn't got a battery plugged in, but that's fine. Tell you what, let's enable expert mode, show you the ports. Not many ports on this little flight controller, just the settings for the tramp control of the VTX. Configuration looks like this. Only things to note here is the motor direction is reversed. D-Shot 300 for controlling everything. 8K and 4K loop frequencies. That's running at only 8%. This is a pretty modern version of Betaflight. That's what's turned on. Air mode is turned on permanently. I'm not sure that's a great idea for a beginner model. Power and battery set like this. Failsafe is set to drop. PID tuning looks like this. Don't worry, I'll do a diff and dump out the settings of this model as it is. Link in the description if you want to have a look. Modes were set up like this. Auxiliary 1 for arm, and then like an acro mode, angle and horizon. Beeper set up on here as well, which is very handy, as well as flip over after crash. All that stuff, again, is actually written on the radio, so it's easy to find. On-screen display, the basic layout is very simple, and there's no real surprises in here how it's set up. In terms of flying, it's really easy to set up. All you need to do is make sure you've got the 4 AA batteries plugged in the back of the radio. Make sure that you charge a couple of the batteries via the supplied USB charger. Pop the 2 batteries underneath the TinyGo and plug those in. Power up your goggles. Believe it or not, even has auto scan as well if you're struggling to find the signal, and away you go. Now the default position with the switches at the back on the radio again is manual, and that, along with having air mode turned on full time, does make this feel like it's aimed at people who have a little bit more experience under their belt. But flying it around, you can see here the camera performs really nicely indoors, hovering well under a half throttle and a nice balance between out-and-out performance and stability. I think the expo rates could have been turned up a little bit, and definitely feels to me like this isn't aimed at a brand new pilot. Again, they could be recording in 4K locally if you stick an SD card in the camera at the top, and I guess that's where some of the additional cost is coming from. Now overall, this is a very, very nice kit. If it was aimed at a beginner, I think they could have probably changed a couple of things. They could have made it easier to fly, have angle mode with a chunk of expo as the default mode, do things like drop the 4K camera, which for a beginner I think is just a lot of extra expense for something that's probably going to be trashed. But if you're not a beginner, then you might have invested in another radio or a set of goggles. And in those instances, this kit isn't going to be up your street. As I said, the radio is perfectly usable, but the gimbals are okay, and there's everything on here that you need and nothing that you don't. This is very much a no-frills radio that works quite nicely, even has a little bit of haptic feedback to let you know when there's something you need to be taking note of. The goggles themselves work quite nicely too. The fit is okay, nothing to write home about, but the inclusion of the DVR and the performance of the optics and how it all works is very good and fit for purpose. But the star of the show is the little TinyGo quadcopter. GepRC makes some really nice stuff, and the QC Pass stuff I see on GepRC models does mean something. And this is a fab little robust model that is a lot of fun to fly. Just be aware that it has that additional expensive camera on top, which is probably adding an extra £30–40 on the cost of this. I would love to see a version of this come out where that was dropped in favour of a cheaper camera to give people who just wanted a one box, one purchase introduction to flying FPV whoops like this an easier, cheaper way in. Thank you for spending your time today watching that video. You can find me in all the usual places on social media, and if you're trying to learn about a subject, then check out the playlist. All of my videos are organised into easy to follow playlists that if you're trying to learn a topic will take you from the basics right the way through to some pretty advanced stuff.